Wartime Lullaby is a song that within Ananda probably most people have never even heard of, let alone heard performed. I know I've never heard it performed in my 23 years around Ananda, but fortunately Bhagavati and Ramesha made a lovely recording of it for the collection called A Tale of Songs that we'll hear in just a moment. For all its obscurity, though, Wartime Lullaby is nevertheless a remarkable song that's full of peace and especially the quality of trust. Trust in God and trust in the divine plan that everything that's going on really has a reason and a purpose, even if we don't really understand what that reason and purpose may be. And through that, the song gives us a choice about what reality we want to surround ourselves with through the power of our attunement. So let's enjoy that song now, and then we'll talk about it for a little bit.
Lullaby, my sweet baby, lullaby, lullaby. Angel voices sing peace on the wind, and the men cry with sorrows. God's silence within speaks of realms that no tears ever stained. Beauty, men say, is a dream never known. Shadow to them is a light, but their gloom is a cry of a lost innocence. Sleep sweetly with God through the night. Lullaby, my sweet baby, lullaby, lullaby. Mountain flowers are not frightened to bloom, and the men spread destruction. Life rises again with a smile for the pull of the tomb. Mercy still sings, though men's leaders cry hate. Peace is still loved, though they fight. Bombs have never extinguished the candle of hope. Sleep sweetly with God through the night. Sleep sweetly with God through the night.
The first verse here in Wartime Lullaby really begins in the heart chakra, as you would expect from a lullaby. So let's listen to just that little bit again here briefly. Just feel it in the heart.
Lullaby, my sweet baby, lullaby, lullaby. Angel voices sing peace on the wind.
Now this line with the thoughts of peace immediately lift from the heart up to the throat chakra, and especially with the words peace on the wind, because wind is the sound of the fifth chakra heard in deep meditation, the sound of wind through the trees. And so we're pulling that again from the heart up to the throat chakra. And now we deepen that a little bit in the next line, and here especially a high note on this line that brings the energy up to, again, the fifth chakra, and the expansive thought of the lyric as well does the same.
And the men cry with sorrows.
And then the phrase goes on to point to a place where there's no fear.
God's silence within speaks of realms that no tears ever stay.
And now the next phrase brings energy up toward the medulla.
beauty men say is a dream never known, shadow to them is a lie.
Now that first little line, you might have heard that little accidental note on never known. There's a little note that's not in the main key there. And that's really to let the ego at the medulla have its doubts, have that little bit of fluctuation. And then the minor chord on shadow to them as a light, on that last phrase of light, gives you the pause to ask whether you'll give in to that little bit of doubt from the ego. And then now the last phrase of the first verse relaxes everything up to the spiritual eye.
But their gloom is a cry of a lost innocence. Sleep sweetly
Into the rest of God.
with God through the night.
Now the innocence here that's spoken of is really the purity of the soul, which is lost when one denies higher truth and higher realities. One denies beauty and chooses to see negatives and shadows everywhere, as the lyrics say. And haven't you been in a time like that where you're kind of in a sour mood and you look around, everything seems negative. Even a beautiful sunrise or a sunset, you would see a problem with that. You probably know people that are like that, and you're trying to point something out around you and they just negate everything. And differently though, when you're in an elevated mood, everything looks beautiful, even mundane object like leaves on the ground. Or I remember a time when I was very, very feeling a great deal of inspiration after a certain trip down to the meditation retreat here. And when I went back to the city, just even the tail lights on the cars on the freeway at night, this red going in one direction and white going the other, it was beautiful to me. Just almost to the point of tears, just because my consciousness was in an elevated space at that time. Now the second verse that we go through in this song, we brought the energy up to the spiritual eye, and now we get wisdom's observations that present the duality that we see in life. So listen as we go through this. You'll hear kind of the mention of a positive contrasted with a negative. So let's hear that whole verse through.
Lullaby, my sweet baby, lale, lale. Mountain flowers are not frightened to bloom, and the men spread destruction
contrasted
life rises again with a smile for the pull of the tomb.
Death.
Mercy still sings, though men's leaders cry hate. Peace is still loved, though they fight. Bombs have never extinguished the candle of hope. Sleep sweetly
again,
with
the call to rest
God
in God, to relax in God.
Sleep sweetly with God.
Now again, look carefully at what wisdom says in this verse. Flowers bloom without fear. And the mountain flowers especially, meaning like the smiles of the upper chakras, have no fear. Life always rises from destruction. Death is an illusion. Mercy is more powerful than hate. Peace is yet present in conflict. And, ironically, people fight in order to find peace. That's why they think fighting is going to bring them the peace they're looking for. And then finally the verse says that hope is more powerful than bombs. And together this gives us a message that our reality is really determined by what we choose to attune ourselves to. Do we want to attune to eternal truths of love and beauty and mercy and peace and joy, which are all aspects of God? Or do we give into the seeming reality of Maya or delusion, represented by the other things such as fear and destruction and hatred and so forth? Now let's be honest about something here in this song. The melody, of course, is very beautiful and soothing and appropriate for a lullaby. But the words, they're not words you would sing to a child. Those are words that reflect the concerns of adults. And so you can really think about the song as the Divine Mother singing to us as her children, because the fact of the matter is we are in the midst of warfare on several levels. For example, there is the war and violence and conflict that goes on the outer world, but to be honest, that stuff is greatly amplified by the news media, and yet because many of us personally never experience those things, and if you look at your life and try to observe what's going on around you and see if you really see that violence and hatred happening, because chances are you probably don't. You probably see more peace and harmony and kindness. And yet the news amplifies it, so we think that the world is full of this sort of thing. But the fact of the matter that it's really not. And so the battle here is not doing battle with those things directly so much as it's battling our own potential negative response to those things, and whether we let the images of that drag us down. And now, irrespective of the conflicts that may be going on elsewhere in the world, we do have conflicts and challenges and battles of everyday life that we have to face. We have fears about health and about money. We have threats of destruction by fire and floods and winds and earthquakes. We have, challenges just from difficult individuals, and really any number of other bombs, you might say, that go off in our lives, that get dropped in, from breakdowns to relationships, to data breaches, to the loss of a job or a loved one. We have accidents, there's health crises that happen, and even stuff like legislation and elections, and even just a tweet from a prominent individual sometimes acts as an exploding bomb in our lives. And again, we have to find a way through that to stay positive. And then thirdly, we have what's going on inside ourselves, which is that battle between the positive spiritual aspirations that we have and the negative downpulling materialistic qualities or the darknesses. This is the battle of Kurukshetra that's talked about in the Mahabharata. Lahiri Mahashaya explained that battle is really representative of the inner psychological battle that we face every day. So really look at all this, and frankly, life is a battlefield. That's in fact a name of a chapter of Swami Kriyananda's book, The Art and Science of Raja Yoga. And when Yogananda was on the ship, the City of Sparta, coming to America in 1920, he was asked to give a lecture in English, and the title that he was asked to speak on was The Battle of Life and How to Fight It. And so right there you have life as a battlefield coming up in many different places. And now just think of how much difficulty people have with these kinds of battles. Again, not the explicit conflicts of true bombs exploding in our lives, of physical destructive bombs or that kind of violence and warfare. But we have all these other things going on, and frankly, people do have a lot of trouble sleeping at night because of those inner battles, because of difficulties in their personal lives, and even the things we hear going on in the news. And we need reassurance. Many of us need reassurance to let it all go, to trust in God, and trust that we can sleep soundly through the night without having to wake up every 5 minutes to check if everything's okay. And many people, unfortunately, try to find that peace through dulling their awareness of the battle, through things like alcohol and drugs or some other means of escape. And fortunately, we have a song like Wartime Lullaby that gives us that reassurance, not through escape, but through a change of consciousness. Getting that consciousness of trust and hope and peace and love that's delivered through the soothing melody that brings peace from a higher place where we can then see the truth behind all the delusions around us. Now, if you think of what happens without that higher consciousness, what would happen? You would end up with your heart just trying to desperately fend off all these attacks, all these negativities that are coming to you. And without that connection to God, frankly, the love and trust of the heart just isn't going to be that strong. And it's eventually going to get pulled down into seeing negatives and perceiving that that's the reality, that that's stronger than the light. But Wartime Lullaby prevents us by lifting the energy up into that light where you can see the relative unreality of the negatives and the stronger true reality of life and joy and peace and love and mercy and hope. And indeed, even if the negatives do have some reality on this planet, they are but specks in the broader reality of not just the whole planet, but our solar system and our galaxy and the whole physical universe, and then the astral universe and the causal universe, into that realm of God and divine consciousness, how big are those seeming realities of violence and hate and war and conflict? They're extremely small. And so tuning yourself into that higher consciousness, as the song helps you to do, overcomes qualities like fear and hopelessness and despair and anxiety. And I think especially anxiety over worldly affairs, just like it's God's green earth, and especially those worldly affairs related to violence and hate and war. And so it's wonderful we can pull this song from obscurity and really, use it whenever you feel that you're getting pulled down or discouraged or disturbed by things that are going on in the world that are, again, brought to us by all these ubiquitous video screens that amplify it, beyond the real reality. And use this song and let it help you recognize that the primary war is the one inside yourself, and that your job is to choose to respond to hate and violence, not with more of the same, but with that peace and that trust and that hope and that love.
Lullaby, my sweet baby, lullaby, lullaby. Angel voices sing peace on the wind, and the men cry with sorrows. God's silence within speaks of realms that no tears ever stained. Beauty, men say, is a dream never known. Shadow to them is a light, but their gloom is a cry of a lost innocence. Sleep sweetly with God through the night. Lullaby, my sweet baby, lullaby, lullaby. Mountain flowers are not frightened to bloom, and the men spread destruction. Life rises again with a smile for the pull of the tomb. Mercy still sings, though men's leaders cry hate. Peace is still loved, though they fight. Bombs have never extinguished the candle of hope. Sleep sweetly with God through the night. Sleep sweetly with God through the night.